everybody, and welcome back to Mr. Smitty's YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking to y'all about how to draw title blocks. I'm going to quickly go over the activity that you're going to be working on in class to review when we talked about orthographic drawings. And then after that, we're going to jump in and I'm going to do a demonstration of how I want you to always do a title block for my class. Alright, the purpose of title blocks are that there needs to be a standardized template that everyone uses in the industry. So that way, if I do a drawing or one of my colleagues does a drawing, all of our drawings are on the same type of template. Alright, and this can be used in manufacturing, engineering, construction, architecture, all the different career fields. Alright, so we're going to hop straight into it, but the first thing I want to talk about is actually an activity to review the activity to review exactly when we talked about orthographic drawings. So we talked about orthographic drawings as having the top, front, and side views. They always have 3 views. So to start class today, I want you to work on this. Basically, it's matching up the 3 views with one of these objects. Alright, so go ahead and work on this, and then you're going to submit it, and then we'll move on to the title blocks. Alright, so at this point, everyone should have submitted that assignment, and we're going to move on and talk about title blocks. So basically, for my class, what you are going to do is your title block is always going to look something like this. Alright, there's a standard format. It always needs to be this way. The dimensions always need to be this way. You're probably going to get to a point where you just go ahead and draw a bunch of these so you don't have to draw them before you start a drawing. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is if you take a look at this, you will notice that there is this large outer rectangle. And if you check the dimensions, it's 1/2 an inch on all sides. So we're going to start by doing that. Alright, so hopefully by now you have a sheet of graph paper and you either have an architecture scale, or if you don't have an architecture scale, you actually have a standard 12-inch ruler. Alright, so what we're going to do first is we're going to mark off the 4 corners of that rectangle. So it's 1/2 an inch. Alright, so what does 1/2 an inch look like? Well, what I'm going to do is I'll measure. So I'm going to grab my inches. And 1/2 an inch is actually 2 of the squares. So that means that each square on this sheet of paper is 1/4 of an inch. So we can either measure with our ruler, or we can count squares when we're doing this. Sometimes I'm going to measure, sometimes I'm going to count squares. In this case, I'm going to count squares. So if I want 1/2 an inch off every corner, then I need to count 2 squares up and 2 squares in, and I'm going to put a little dot. Same thing here, 2 squares down, 1, 2, 2 squares in, put a little dot. Same thing over here, 1, 2, 1, 2, put a little dot. Over here, 1, 2, 1, 2. Alright, so now I have all 4 of my corners marked. At this point, it's just taking your ruler, playing a little game of connect the dots. Alright guys, it's important to take your time. Make sure you get a nice, straight, solid line. If you remember from our last video, ortho means straight. Ortho means straight, so we definitely want all our lines to be straight if we're doing an orthographic drawing. Alright, so kind of a rule of thumb, if you know a line is final, so you've measured it, you know your dimensions and everything are precise, go ahead and feel free to make it really, really dark. Alright, if you're not sure if your line's going to be a final line, like you might have to erase, then it's okay to draw it very lightly and go back later and make it darker. I didn't do a great job, but kind of working over here. Alright, So I'll give you a second, and while y'all are finishing drawing that, this is our very first template, so we want to make sure we include the dimensions. And when you dimension, in this case right now, I'm going to use arrows. In our drawing, we will not. We'll actually use brackets, but just so that it shows up better, I'm going to use arrows in the video. Alright, so we went in 2 blocks, so how far was that? Good, good, half an inch. So I'm going to label that 1/2 inch. Alright, and I'm also going to label the top. So I'm going to find pretty much the middle. Draw in my 2 arrows. And alright, so again, the reason we're doing dimensioning is because you're going to draw a lot of these, and this is going to be your template to draw them. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look. So the next thing we need to do is actually draw these 4 separate areas. So the first box is 2.5 inches in, the second one is an additional 4, then 2.5, and then 1. Alright, so 2.5, 4, 2.5, 1. So we're going to go to our sheet and let's mark it first. Always mark before you draw. So I want to go 2.5 in. So again, I could measure or count just to prove to you. Oh, and guys, I didn't mention this. We're going to go another 1/2 inch up. So you want to make sure you go 2 squares. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that 2 square mark on both sides. We're going to go up 2 squares on either side. All right, now we want to go 2.5 in. So I'm going to measure that. And right there, the big line. All right, then 4 inches in. And another 2.5 inches in. And 1 inch. So if I know I did it correctly, I'm going to have 4 squares left. 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's an inch. So I know I did it right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go in and... Oh, actually, I don't want to do that yet. Ignore what I just did. All right, so now I'm going to go in and actually draw my line all the way across. I could have marked afterwards, but I kind of like to do all my markings and then draw. So I've got the mark at 2.5, so I'm going to do a vertical line there. I've got the mark 4 more in, vertical line there, and finally this mark here. Alright, so y'all watched me measure, so now we're going to do the dimensions. So when I do the dimensions, I'm going to add my arrows where they need to go. So I'm just adding little arrows above where I have my separations. Alright, and then now I'm going to draw the lines between the arrows for my dimensions. So I could draw one line all the way across, but I feel like it's more efficient to take it step by step. It's definitely more precise. Alright. That way you're making sure your lines are straight all the way through. Alright, so what were those? Well, this was 2.5 inches. This was 4 inches. This was 2.5 inches. And we have 1 inch on the end. Alright, I have one more dimension I want to do. Remember, we went 1/2 inch up. So we need to make sure we come over here and add that 1/2 inch. That way we'll remember. Alright, so I've been measuring everything using my ruler. Another way you could do this is you could count the squares. So 2.5 inches is actually 10 squares. 4 inches, so 4 inches with 4 squares in each, that's going to be 16 squares. 2.5 again is 10, and 1 inch will be 4. So if you'd rather count the squares, those are the number of squares. All right, so if we go back and take a look, the last thing we need to do now is insert the titles for each one of those separate blocks within our title block. All right, so in the industry, it looks a little bit different, but for the classroom setting, these are the 4 pieces of information that are valuable to your teacher. So they're the 4 pieces that we are going to include. So we're going to start with class name, and what I want you to notice is that I'm writing in all caps. All right, this is called lettering. So within technical drawing, so that people's handwriting does not vary between person to person, the standard is basically that you write in all caps. Let's be real, some of y'all just scribble words. All right, this is to help eliminate issues with us not being able to read it. All right, our second block here, the 4-inch block, is the name of the drawing. Name of the drawing. All right, third block is your name. And the fourth block is the scale. All right, so scale represents, we're going to go into this in more detail, but if you think about a house, right? House is gigantic. Thousands of square feet. Well, hundreds of square feet. Some people, thousands of square feet. All right. You have to take that diagram of the house and shrink it down to put it on a piece of paper. The way we do that is using scale. So we can, for instance, here, each one of the squares is a 1/4 of an inch. So then we can say that maybe a 1/4 of an inch represents 100 feet. So then every inch represents 400 feet. All right, and then every foot would then be, what is that? 400 times 12? Yeah, I'm not a quick math guy. That'd be 4,800 feet? Maybe? I don't know. Somebody check me. All right, but you get the idea, right? So we're going to have a scale. So things like 1/4 of an inch is equal to 1 foot will be here, or 1/8 of an inch is equal to 10 feet. All right, so once we get into scale, that block will make more sense. And that's pretty much it, guys. So what you're going to be doing over the next couple days, actually next class period, you're going to be tasked with creating 3 more of these. All right, when you make your next one, you're going to leave class name, name of drawing, and scale blank. You can go ahead and put your name in there. And you're not going to include the dimensions. So it'll just be this rectangle with the 4 sub blocks, and then don't put class name, name of drawing, or scale in. All right, so you're basically creating templates for you to do all of your drawings on for this year. All right, well, that's it for title blocks. Let me know if you have any questions. As always, I appreciate your support, and there's going to be some more videos coming. Thanks.